The mansion buzzed with excitement as guests arrived. I was in the heart of it, yet I felt like a fish out of water. The grand hall was decorated tastefully, with tall vases of roses lining the room. As I walked through the entrance, I could see a mix of familiar and unfamiliar faces. My husband, John, was deep in conversation with a couple of his friends. He had that charm, an easy way of making everyone feel comfortable. It's one of the things I loved most about him. When our eyes met across the room, he gave me a reassuring smile. To my right, Clara, John's mother, was holding court. She had a regal bearing, every inch the matriarch. A couple of women surrounded her, hanging on to her every word. They laughed at her jokes and agreed with her opinions, clearly vying for her approval. Drawing a deep breath, I decided to approach Clara. "Good evening, Clara," I greeted with as much warmth as I could muster. "It's a lovely party. Thank you for having me." She looked at me for a moment, sizing me up. "So you're the new addition?" she remarked, her tone flat. Trying to keep things light, I replied, "Yes, that's me. John speaks very highly of you." Clara's eyes darted over my outfit before she said, "Could use some fashion advice." The comment, meant for all ears, elicited giggles from her group of admirers. Feeling my cheeks redden but not wanting to appear weak, I responded, "Thanks for the tip. I always appreciate good advice." Lydia, Clara's daughter and John's sister, stepped forward with a sly smile. "Mother always knows best, doesn't she?" "Oh, absolutely," I responded, trying to sound nonchalant. From the corner of my eye, I noticed John making his way over. "Ladies," he greeted, nodding at Clara and Lydia. "I see you've met my beautiful wife." "Just getting acquainted," Clara said with a slight smirk. John, sensing the underlying tension, tried to ease the situation. "How about a dance, Mary?" he proposed, extending a hand to me. I gratefully accepted, and as he led me to the dance floor, I whispered, "Thank you." He squeezed my hand, whispering back, "Always." The rest of the evening was a whirlwind of introductions, dance, and polite conversation. But that first interaction with Clara set the tone for our relationship. It was clear. I was an outsider, a stranger in their midst. Living in the expansive mansion was like walking on a tightrope every day, especially with John away for work. The house was huge with its winding corridors and countless rooms. I tried to personalize our space, adding little bits of us in corners, hoping to transform the museum-like aura to something warmer and more homely. However, the rules, most of which were unspoken but expected, loomed large. I'd get gentle reminders from Clara about how things are done in this household. Things like which china to use for breakfast, which room not to sit in, or even the correct way to answer the landline phone. It felt restrictive and suffocating. One particular morning, after John left for work, I was in our designated living room, rearranging some books and adding personal photos to the shelves, trying to make the mansion feel more like home. That's when I heard the door unlocking. Before I could even turn around, Clara was inside, that familiar smirk gracing her lips. "Good morning, Clara," I greeted, attempting to keep things cordial. "Wasn't expecting you this early." She cast a quick glance around the room, her gaze landing on the pictures I had just set up. "Just wanted to see how you were settling in." I picked up one photo of John and me on our honeymoon. Just trying to add some personal touches to the room. Clara walked over, taking the picture from my hand. "Oh, how sweet. But we generally keep personal photos in the bedrooms, dear." Before I could respond, Lydia stepped into the room, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Mother, don't overwhelm her. She's still learning." She winked at me. "Isn't that right?" Caught between the two, I nodded, struggling to find my voice. "Yes, still learning. Thank you both for your guidance." Clara, apparently not done with her inspection, walked over to a table. With a dramatic sweep of her finger, she showed an almost invisible layer of dust. "You really should try cleaning more often," she tut-tutted. Lydia laughed. "Or maybe hire someone who knows how." It's no shame in needing help, especially if housekeeping isn't your strong suit. I felt my cheeks burn. I cleaned it yesterday, but perhaps the house is just too big for one person to manage. Clara smirked. Oh, we managed just fine before you came along. Feeling cornered, I took a deep breath, determined not to let them see me crumble. I appreciate your feedback. Maybe you can suggest a cleaning routine or help that you previously employed. It's always good to learn from experience. As Clara and Lydia exchanged glances, I took my chance to exit. I've got to head out for some shopping now. Thank you for the visit. Walking away, I felt their eyes on my back. The message was clear. This was their territory, and I was an intruder. The unwelcome mat wasn't just a piece of fabric at the entrance. It was an ever-present shadow, reminding me of my outsider status. Weeks went by, and as difficult as living in the mansion was, there was one recurring event that I found especially hard to handle. Every time I gathered the courage to approach John about possibly moving out, Clara would somehow have a health issue. One evening, John and I were out in the garden. I took his hand. John, don't you think it might be good for us to have a place of our own? Somewhere we can start our life together, just the two of us? Before he could respond, Clara's voice echoed from the balcony. John, come quickly, my heart. Without a second thought, John dropped my hand and rushed to her. I followed closely, worry replacing the resolve I had moments ago. We found Clara on the couch, Lydia by her side, patting her hand with a worried expression. It's her heart, Lydia whispered dramatically. Clara looked weak, but when her eyes met mine, there was a glint of something I couldn't quite decipher. Triumph, perhaps? John, his face pale with concern, called the family doctor. After a thorough checkup, the doctor reassured us that it was just a minor scare, and Clara would be fine with some rest. Mom's not well. We can't leave now, John whispered to me later that night, wrapping his arms around me. I understood his concern, but a nagging doubt persisted. The next evening, I was in the kitchen, looking for a snack, when I heard Clara's voice. She was speaking in hushed tones, but the house's acoustics carried the sound to where I was. It was a conversation between her and Lydia. A little act, and he's right where I want him, Clara chuckled. Lydia's voice responded, It works every time. He won't leave you. Feeling like the walls were closing in on me, I retreated to our room. The realization was like a cold slap to my face. I wasn't just battling with their unwelcome behavior. I was dealing with calculated manipulation. Every few weeks, Clara would organize grand gatherings at the mansion, inviting family members, old friends, and acquaintances. It was one such evening when the vast living area of the mansion was buzzing with chatter, laughter, and the clinking of wine glasses. For most, it was an event to catch up, share stories, and indulge in delicious food. For me, it felt like stepping into a lion's den. As I entered the room, adjusting the hem of my dress self-consciously, Clara's voice rang out above the rest. Ladies and gentlemen, our latest addition to the family, the stranger, has finally graced us with her presence. A few tittered, while others, not as familiar with Clara's games, looked confused. But it was Lydia's voice, dripping with fake sweetness, that drew the room's attention next. Maybe she took a while because she was lost? This house can be so confusing for newcomers. People laughed, some out of politeness, and others genuinely enjoying the spectacle. Determined not to let them ruffle me, I made my way towards a group of younger cousins, hoping for a less hostile environment. Before I could even make small talk with them, an older uncle, probably trying to ease the situation, said, "Oh dear, I've heard you're quite the cook. Made anything special tonight?" Seizing the opportunity, Clara cut in. Yes, she tried her hand at the main dessert. We all remember her last attempt, don't we, Lydia? Lydia, always eager to jump into the fray, laughed. Oh yes, let's hope tonight doesn't disappoint as the last time did. Feeling the weight of the room's attention on me, I took a deep breath. Yes, I tried a new recipe. I hope everyone enjoys it. The evening wore on, and it seemed like Clara and Lydia had made a game of tacking jabs at me. Comments about my choice of attire, the way I spoke, or even the way I held my glass. Nothing was off limits. It was exhausting. Every step I took, every word I uttered, was met with scrutiny. John, for his part, seemed caught in a tough spot. I'd occasionally find him glancing my way, a mix of concern and helplessness in his eyes. But he never did intervene. At one point, when Clara made a rather snide remark about my family background, I looked to John, hoping for some support. But he simply looked down, took a sip of his drink, and carried on with his conversation. It wasn't just the hurtful words or the mockery that was taking a toll on me. It was also the realization that in a room full of family, I was utterly alone. Only Aunt June, Clara's sister-in-law, offered some solace. She'd occasionally shoot sympathetic glances my way or whisper words of encouragement. "You're stronger than their words," she once murmured as she passed by. As the clock ticked away and the evening gradually came to a close, the heavy weight in my chest remained. Another gathering had come and gone, and I was reminded once again of my place in this family, or rather, the lack of it. In the days following the gathering, the atmosphere in the mansion was different. Tensions had risen, and there was a palpable sense of unease in the air. The previous gatherings had already taken their toll on me, and I was beginning to feel the strain. One morning, as I was choosing my outfit for the day, I decided to pick a dress I hadn't worn since before I was married. It was bolder than anything I dared to wear in Clara's home. But today, I felt different. Enough was enough. I was tired of constantly trying to fit into the mold Clara and Lydia had set for me. As I walked downstairs, I could feel the eyes on me. Clara was sitting in the living room, reading a magazine. She looked up and her eyes widened slightly. "Decided to change things up, have we?" she asked, a hint of sarcasm evident. Lydia, ever her mother's shadow, smirked from behind her. "Trying out a new style?" Ignoring them, I responded, "Yes, I felt like it. Change can be refreshing." During breakfast, I decided to go against another unspoken rule of the house. Instead of serving Clara and Lydia first, I took a portion for myself. John looked surprised but said nothing. The day continued in a similar fashion. When Clara commented on how the living room was arranged, hinting that it wasn't to her taste, I calmly responded, "Well, sometimes change is good. Maybe we can try this new setup for a while." By evening, it was clear that Clara and Lydia were not pleased with my newfound confidence. I could hear them whispering in corners, their eyes darting towards me with disapproval. John, who had mostly stayed out of our interactions, seemed increasingly anxious. During dinner, Clara tried to regain her control. "I was thinking of hosting another gathering next week," she began, eyeing me pointedly. "That sounds like a lot of work. Maybe we can skip this one," I countered. Lydia's eyes flashed with irritation. Mom has always hosted these gatherings. Why should this month be any different? Before I could respond, John intervened, trying to defuse the situation. "Maybe we can discuss this later." But the storm was already brewing. The winds of change had begun to blow, and there was no turning back. Despite the tensions at home, Clara went ahead with the plans for another gathering. As the day approached, I felt a strange mix of dread and determination. This time, I was ready. The day of the feast arrived. Guests began to pour into the house, filling it with chatter and laughter. The dining table was a grand affair, laden with Clara's best china and silverware, and food that smelled divine. I made my entrance wearing a dress I felt confident in, with my head held high. Clara was among the first to notice. "Oh, look at you," she said mockingly, drawing attention to me. "Trying so hard, aren't we?" Lydia couldn't resist adding, "What's the occasion? Why the sudden change?" Instead of shying away, I replied, "Every day is an occasion, Lydia. It's about time I realized that." The room was abuzz with whispered conversations. I could tell some guests were taken aback by my response, not used to seeing this side of me. Dinner began, and as the courses came and went, the atmosphere grew tenser. Clara tried her usual jabs, commenting on everything from the food to the guests' attire. When she remarked on a dish I had made, saying, "It seems our dear daughter-in-law is trying new recipes. Let's hope this one's edible." I had had enough. Taking a deep breath, I said, "Clara, since we're giving opinions, I think your food could use a little more flavor. And your dress? Maybe it was fashionable a decade ago." Gasps filled the room. Clara looked as if she had been slapped. Lydia, ever eager to come to her mother's defense, scowled at me. "How dare you?" "And you, Lydia," I continued. "You've spent so much time in your mother's shadow, I wonder if you even have your own opinions." By this time, the room was silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. John looked uncomfortable, clearly not expecting this turn of events. Clara finally found her voice. "You ungrateful—" "Enough, Clara," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "Enough of this constant belittling. I'm a part of this family, whether you like it or not." The rest of the evening was a blur. Some guests tried to ease the tension with light conversation, while others left early, sensing the mood wasn't going to improve. As the last guest departed and the front door closed, the real storm had only just begun. The immediate aftermath of the gathering was palpable. Clara, Lydia, and John sat in the living room, and I joined them, determined to clear the air once and for all. Lydia was the first to break the silence. "You've crossed a line today. How could you embarrass us in front of our guests like that?" I looked her squarely in the eye. "I spoke the truth, Lydia. If the truth is embarrassing, maybe it's time for some introspection." Clara, her face a shade redder than usual, responded, "You come into this family and you think you can change everything?" "No, Clara, I don't want to change everything. I just want respect. Is that too much to ask?" John finally spoke up, his voice shaky. "Can we all just calm down? Arguing won't solve anything." I turned to face him. "John, you've been quiet throughout all of this. It's not just about tonight. It's about every day, every comment, every jab. Why haven't you said anything?" John looked down, struggling to find words. "I wanted to keep the peace. I thought it would get better with time." Keeping the peace? At the cost of my dignity? I thought. I had imagined John to be my pillar of strength, but in the crucial moments, he had chosen silence. "John, keeping the peace doesn't mean turning a blind eye," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. He looked up, pain evident in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have done more." The room went silent again, but this time it wasn't the uncomfortable silence of before. It was the silence of realization, the silence that follows after masks have fallen and facades have been shattered. Clara, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her, whispered, "I just wanted what's best for my son." "And what about what's best for me? Don't I matter?" I responded. The weight of the night's events began to settle in. The family, for so long bound by pretense and appearances, was now at a crossroads. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change for the better. The house, once a symbol of hope and new beginnings, had turned into a prison of judgments and unsolicited advice. As I packed my bags, I reflected on the journey. I had tried to fit into their mold, to be what they wanted, only to realize they'd never truly accept me. But in that attempt, I had learned an important lesson. I had seen what it was to become them, to stoop to their level of pettiness. But that was not who I wanted to be. John walked into the room, his face pale. "You're leaving?" "Yes, John," I replied calmly. "I've shown that I can play their games, be just like them. But that's not who I truly am. I don't want to lose myself in their world of superficiality." "But we can work this out, can't we?" he pleaded. "John, it's not about working it out anymore. It's about me preserving my essence, my dignity. I deserve more than just to fit in or be tolerated." The trip to the lawyer's office felt both long and short. The end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Relocating to a new city gave me a fresh start. I established a career where I was valued for my skills and character. I formed genuine bonds with people who didn't see the world through the narrow lens of societal expectations. As time went on, I flourished, not as someone's daughter-in-law or wife, but as an individual with her own identity. The irony was that my success in the professional and personal realm soon became the talk of the town. The very people who once looked down upon me now gossiped about my achievements. But by then, their opinions didn't matter. I had chosen to prioritize my mental and emotional well-being over their approval. I had proven I could be like them, but had chosen a path of kindness, understanding, and self-preservation. In choosing myself, I found the peace and happiness that had eluded me for so long. No longer defined by others, I thrived, standing tall in my truth and authenticity.